Hi, um, I'm Sydney, and I'm your summer school English teacher, and I was inspired today to give you this short lesson on passing or learning, which matters most. You might remember, if you've watched other videos, that I am usually a teacher at a transfer high school. Transfer high schools, like mine, South Brooklyn Community High School, serve 16 and older students who've gotten behind in their coursework. And instead of 2 semesters a year, we offer 3 trimesters. And there's an advanced accelerated path so you can catch up and make up credits there. Well, one of the things I've gotten out of that is I've seen a lot of students who were passed along, right? So sometimes you pass even though you don't learn what you were intended to learn in the class. And part of what I got to thinking about this was a student that's emailed me a couple of times with that very phrasing. The student has said, how can I pass your class? And this is that student's pupil path. So this is the first place we're going to look to show you how you can actually have all the information, because I am a firm believer in students should have all the information. Other teachers keep their grade book where they would have like put all of these numbers together in one number that they came up with and put in. I'm going to show you exactly what grade you got on each of the various tasks that Edmentum had for you to do, right? So all of the mastery tests, including the end of semester test this student took already. And they got a 55% on that test. But they got 45, 45, 45, 45. All these 45s mean those were not even attempted, right? Those are zeros. Those are, I didn't take that test. I'm kind of benevolent and I understand how averages work, so I would never put zeros. They would just decimate your grade. 45, at least there's a chance for these other grades to average in. And if you had more, 80s and 100s, you could possibly pass even without doing every single piece of the work, right? That's how averages work. It's add it all up, divide by the criteria or the number of items you're adding up, and you get your percentage. But right now, I don't have any evidence that this student has learned very much. And let me find how do I get back into my PowerPoint? Here we go. So there's 2 categories, right, the grading policy. And this is the grading policy that Dewey gave to me. It's not something that I made up. They wanted me to give you 80% of the course is Edmentum. So that's exactly what I did. And the other 20% of the course is socio-emotional learning and communication. And that was really supposed to be the district provided all these lovely lessons for me to deliver to you on Zoom or Google Meet. But I never got more than 1 or 2 students there the whole entire semester. And so I was never able to do any of those lessons. Instead, I gave you some of my best lessons as a transfer school educator, my attitude lesson, my time management lesson, my multitasking, mindset, and sleep, right? So these are fairly short. I gave them as video lessons, and all you had to do was watch the videos I provided and write some comments, and you're gonna get either 4 out of 4 or 5 out of 5, depending on how many points I gave it. I also put in this category the discussions. Those are on Edmentum, but because they were discussions and you could conceivably see other students' work, I'm not sure that that's true, because I never did get to see your view of it and nobody came to class to tell me about that. But my assumption was you could actually discuss with each other, and that would be a bit social. So I put it in this category. So if you have a 45 on one of those, definitely go back and do that now. That is going to make this average higher, and all the numbers hopefully will work out better. But this student, if they just want to pass the class, they've already done most of the easy stuff. They could do this discussion, but really the way to pass the class is to go back and do the time and put the work in. Because the truth is, English classes are a semester long, and a semester is 54 hours, right? At South Brooklyn, our class lengths are an hour long rather than 45 minutes at a traditional school, so that you can have that extra time. You need those 54 minutes of class time in order for it to be considered a class. Well, here this student has only done 9 out of 21 activities and has only gotten 4 hours, 14 minutes, and 26 seconds of time in, right? So that's very little. That's like going to class only 4 days out of an entire semester. So that's not a lot of time put in. Of course you're not passing, yet we still have time. And because you can do your work asynchronously, which means on your own time at your own pace, there's nothing stopping you. I've actually seen students at my school who, this one kid, Eli, he had graduation looming, and he had one last little English credit that was from 10th grade that was still outstanding, and he'd never made it up. And he had every other credit and all his exams, and he was like, I'm ready to graduate. I'm logging in. Give me the iLearn. And we gave him the iLearn, and I tell you, 4 days later, he had passed. So it is humanly possible. Eli's mom told me there was a lot of coffee involved, so I don't recommend it, but it can happen. All right, so let's take a look further. Oh, this is a new student. So we talk about, like, you know, how do I pass versus how do I learn? Learning is actually far more important. I've seen so many students come to South Brooklyn and they passed, right? They got that 65, but they clearly didn't learn anything because they don't have the skills that that course was supposed to teach them. And so I'll look at their transcript and I'll say, somebody did you dirty. They lied to you, basically. They said you were ready and you're not. So learning actually takes effort. It takes time. It takes something, right? It takes making mistakes and getting it wrong and trying again. So here is an example of a student who put in more time, and we'll see that, right? The end of semester test is a 75. I've got a couple of 60s here. That's when the computer gives you a 60 because that's the score you get on that test. But I've also got a couple hundreds, right? So it's not just clear cut. There's evidence that this student maybe struggles a bit with print and graphic features and structural analysis and author's purpose, but totally gets language usage and literary devices and purpose, right? I can see. We also see that on this page, most of the grades are really high. And then look, this kid took one of the field trips, right? So the field trips are extra credit. If you do the ones that I've posted on iLearn, they're extra credit. He did 3 or 4 field trips, and the unit discussions really well done, and communicates with me, has come to the Google Meet class, first period at that. Not often, but more than once, and communicates with me regularly, and whenever needed something, communicated, right? So did all my lessons. This is 107% in that category, right? So this student is passing with a 90. And most likely I'll bump it up to a 95, because if it's anywhere in the 91 to whatever range, I'll bump it up to a 95. Why? Well, because this student clearly spent some time on task. Look at that, 25 hours. Now, still did it in half the time the normal English course would be taken at school, but I still see that the mastery is there, right? Exempted on this part, if you see exempted, it's because that student did so well on that pretest, they didn't even have to do the course. That would cut the time down, right? So if there's some things you already knew, I guess purposeful language, defending and challenging claims already was some part of the student's knowledge base, right? So if you already know it, you just prove it and you move on. That's one of the things I actually liked about this format. But here's the magic, right? Look at this tries. This student did 34 tries on the Unit 1. And just a couple of the highlights, this characteristics and structures of argumentative texts took the student an hour and 25 minutes. They did it 7 times before they got that 80%. So just because the 80's there doesn't mean you know the backstory on how it got there, right? So are you learning, right? The mastery test where they already were exempted out and they didn't need it, those hundreds aren't as important. They don't mean as much. But these 4 tries to get that 100, these 3 tries to get that 60, that's more interesting, right? This is clearly an area of struggle, and they might need even more time than this to really get structural analysis and author's purpose. Good to know. That's what you want to study in 10th grade. And English is recursive, so you'll notice that even within this course, some of the same content came back, right? You saw rhetorical devices more than once, you saw literary devices more than once. That keeps coming back throughout English. It keeps getting up and more complex in the way that we use those tools and the text that we use. But putting the time in is really important. But you might go, oh, but Miss, I don't have any time to put in. What do I do? Well, you could be this kid. This kid came to my Google Meet this morning for the very first time. I talked to the parent yesterday who said, what assignments is my child missing? And I said, all of them, because I haven't heard not one word from this person until the Monday of the last week of summer school. And some other teacher might tell you it was too late, but already the student changed 2 grades, right? They changed the 45 in communication to a 65. Tomorrow it'll go to a 75 if I hear from him again, and 85, and so it can keep going up, right? And this discussion fairness was done, and done well enough that I have confidence that if this young man applies himself and does what he promised me he would do, that he could be halfway through the course by now. Right? I spoke to him this morning at 8 o'clock. It's now 6:22 when I'm making this video for you. Um, Again, I'm off the clock right now. So it's not about the paycheck, it's about your learning. It's about learning, because learning matters far more than anything else. So I don't really care if you pass, because I don't want you in my transfer school classroom in 3 years still not knowing how to defend or challenge claims, or not understanding what purpose, audience, and point of view is about in argumentative texts, right? You see, I actually want you to learn. And why do we want to learn how to argue? So we can change this world we're in. I'm not doing this by accident. I would like you to go out there in the world and see what you're supposed to do. And I'd like you armed with the literacy skills to do it well. All right. Good luck. Don't give up. I'll be looking for more work. Keep trying.